Next, we shall talk about the definition of psychological magic. What is psychological magic, you ask? Psychological magic is essentially a usage of magical techniques, or play magic even, to achieve psychological changes to yourself, or even to help others, such as during a speech, perhaps. That's one example. Another may be to change the mood of the general area, also possibly during a speech. Psychological magic. To affect one's belief systems or sense of self. What are some techniques? Banishing. Banishing is a big one. This can be usually done via maniacal laughter or an indifferent feeling towards it. Maniacal laughter is, in my opinion, better for perhaps an active role of something you don't want. Banishing is essentially getting rid of something you don't want, or to help you ground yourself. And for indifference, that's more for a passive or indirect effect upon yourself or others, if you choose to go that route. Psychological magic. Grounding oneself is also a good practice for psychological magic. Several effective techniques for this would be perhaps to watch TV, eat a heavy meal, anything that centers yourself into physical reality, and not so much the spiritual. One second, checking notes. Oh, invocation. This is kind of what I'm doing right now. The invocation of G. Satan the Christopher, which seems to be more of my higher self, my knowledgeable self, myself who is good at magic and good at all things that I like to do. Invocation. To draw upon a outside power within oneself in order to embody that as part of your natural self. For example, invoking a god that is the god of laughter, or invoking Harpo Marx, I think it is one example that Phil Hahn gives in his book Prime Chaos for an invocation, or is it evocation? One of the two. But that is an example of something to give you laughter and lack of seriousness. To chill. To have a good time. And not just be a serious stick in the mud, if you will. Then there's also evocation, which isn't significantly relevant to psychological magic, but going on with invocation, you can invoke the feeling of happiness. There are several ways to do this. One example I'll give is to remember a happy memory. Remember it, feel it, embody it, and become happy that you had that. That would be an invocation of happiness. If you can also technically use these for negative invocations, if that's your, how do you say, inclination. However, that's not my suit. But for shits and giggles, I'll give an example. Invoking a murder that you may fancy, in order to, or perhaps even a serial murder, and embodying that in order to get a sick, twisted hit off of murdering someone. Just an example. I do not suggest this, because he will be in jail. Unless you're really fucking good. I'll put it that way. But, continuing on, we'll actually go to self-hypnosis. For me, I find that I easily enter trance states, which allows me to easily hypnotize myself for whatever means I may need, which is quite unusual for most people. However, I will give one suggestion that maybe prove the right moment, and that is to perhaps get into a point where you're so tired that you're literally falling asleep while sitting up, like passing out literally because you're so tired. This can be in the middle of the night, waking up in the middle of the night, and then possibly you staying up for a little while until that starts happening, or staying up several nights. And during that time, while you're passing out, you continuously wake up while sitting, because your head will lean out, and if you're like me, you tend to jerk it back up because of that. But during that time, you focus on what you want to hypnotize yourself with, a mantra, if you will. Say you want to smile more or be happy more often. During that time, you'll focus on your mind, or in words, if that's your choice. I am happy. I am happy. I am happy. I am happy. And so on, as you continually pass out. Because this is a definite point at which it actually gets to the subconscious, which allows it to take effect. And this is most parts of psychological magic. The last one I want to get onto is mantras, personal mantras. Something you say regularly to yourself to embody a feeling or idea that you want to exist within yourself. Again, this can go back to self-hypnosis example, and that being, I am happy, I am happy, I am happy, and continue upon this. Another example would be, I am peacefully loving of all beings. I am peacefully loving of all beings. Or even, I'm just peaceful. I am peaceful. I am peaceful. I am infinitely loving. Or I am simply just loving. I am loving. I am loving. And lastly, I'll brush on a little bit of the trance state as it occurs for me. For me, my trance state, I tend to enter very easily when listening to music. When I enter into the trance state, I am more along the lines of moving. I'll be dancing and not really being concentrating on any specific moves. I'll be just moving with the beat in whatever pattern that comes to me. I have my own subconscious patterns that I tend to follow. But when you're doing this without any conscious thought, without anything specific that you're geared towards, this is a trance state. When you've dropped off into whatever's going on at the moment. For me, when I listen to music, I'm constantly moving. I will tend to be moving my head around a lot to the beat, which sometimes does give me headaches. I might need to get that checked out. But, anyways, on to what's going on. And that is, it tends to be, I've never been drunk, but I would say something to that attunement, if you know what that's like. But it's basically where you're just going with whatever's happening at the moment, without really any conscious thought about it. And that ends this discussion. I will continue this discussion on further trance ideas at a later time.